Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Our mission here, as always, is simple. We take that stack of sources you provide, we cut through all the noise, and we deliver the crucial insights, the essential story.
And today, we are going deep, really deep.
We're heading to a place that is, it's almost otherworldly. Prudhoe Bay, Alaska, you're talking 600 miles north of Anchorage. This is the home of the largest oil field in North America.
And this investigation takes us right into the absolute heart of a corporate panic. And it's a world of just extreme logistical contradictions. We're going to be unpacking the high-stakes operation of a company called Arpetco on the North Slope.
And it all kicks off with what seems like, a discrete internal problem, a drug-related death.
Right. But it spirals. It spirals so fast into this complex triple threat. You've got high-level cocaine smuggling, what looks like a murder cover-up, and then the most shocking part, the systematic theft of priceless Native Alaskan cultural artifacts.
The sources really detail the experience of this one investigator, Kate Shugak. She's hired to go undercover. And not as some, white-collar auditor.
No, not at all.
She goes in as a roustabout.
Which is the grunt work, the absolute lowest rung on the ladder. She's there to infiltrate this incredibly controlled, this hyper-engineered environment. So this was definitely not a routine audit.
No.
Yeah.
And the stakes for Arpetco were, you can't even quantify them. They're astronomical.
Absolutely. They are the majority operator in what's called the Western Operating Area. And you have to understand the numbers here. They are responsible for pulling something like 1.5 million barrels of oil out of the ground.
Per day.
Every single day. And that production, that one field, it accounts for roughly 14% of the entire U.S. domestic oil supply.
Wow.
So when a production operator, a guy named Chuck Cass, dies of an overdose right on the base camp premises in the swimming pool of all places, the company is facing a truly existential threat.
A death linked to drugs just screams a critical failure of internal security. Operational control is completely gone.
Exactly. And if that information gets out, you're looking at an immediate federal and state regulatory shutdown. And that would instantly halt 14% of the nation's oil supply.
So the mission was absolutely critical. Find the drug problem, get rid of it, and, do it very, very quietly.
That is the high-stakes, high-pressure world our investigator, Kate, had to step into.
Okay, so let's unpack this corporate cold front. The personalities that really set the tone for this whole operation. We meet the leadership right at the beginning, and they are, they're quite the pair.
Oh, there are studies in contrast, absolutely.
Yeah.
At the very top, you've got John King. He's the CEO of Arpetco's Alaskan division. And the sources, they paint such a vivid picture of him.
It's not a typical CEO image, is it?
Not at all. He's described as having a ruddy fireplug build, a man who just seems to command a room through sheer intimidation.
Yeah.
And he has these thick-lensed glasses that grotesquely magnify his stare, giving him this constant baleful glare.
So, less boardroom, more old school Texas wildcatter.
Exactly. You're more likely to see him in frayed jeans and these mustard yellow cowboy boots than in a suit. He's the raw, unfiltered power of the company.
And then you have his foil, Security Chief Lou Childress. If King is this chaotic force of nature, Childress is the complete opposite.
He is the embodiment of rigid government issue control. The sources call him DI-certified hostile. A retired military man completely obsessed with control, with appearance.
You see in the details, right? The nice sharp creases in his tailored slacks, the high polish on his black loafers.
Yes. And the only thing that kind of spoils that perfect military facade, according to the sources, is his incipient potbelly, which he is constantly fighting to keep contained by this super tight bolt.
That one little detail, it tells you everything, doesn't it?
It does. He's a man fighting a losing battle for control over his own body, and that just perfectly mirrors Arpetco's bigger fight to control this isolated, chaotic empire they've built.
And their whole attitude, this corporate arrogance, it comes out immediately in the meeting where they hire Kate Shugak.
Oh, yeah. Despite her reputation, which is backed by the DA's office in the FBI, they're instantly dismissive. At first, they're just referring to her as a broad.
And then a native broad.
Right. And then they try to lowball her on the fee.
What did they start at?
They offered $750 a day, plus expenses. And Childress, he immediately starts trying to chisel down the expenses, arguing that, Arpetco provides everything, food, lodging, gear. So what could she possibly need an expense account for?
But the real sticking point, the thing that almost scuttled the whole deal, was the loyalty oath.
This is where it gets really good. This wasn't just some standard NDA. It was a corporate pledge of allegiance designed to legally muzzle her forever.
And Kate, she uses that moment to completely flip the power dynamic.
She does. Her response, which the sources describe as being delivered with lethal sweetness, was so direct. She just asks, am I going to work on the North Slope or am I joining the American Nazi Party?
Wow. That's that's drawing a line in the sand.
A very clear line. And that challenge, equating their corporate control document with, fascism, it completely forces King's hand. He can't afford to lose her expertise, not with the clock ticking. So he doubles down on the price to guarantee her discretion and, more importantly, her silence.
So what did they finally land on?
The final compensation was negotiated up to $1,000 a day, plus another $250 a day for expenses. It was this clear corporate admission that their need for absolute secrecy was worth more than their standard cheapness.
And she takes the cover as a roustabout utility worker hired through this fake contractor, Yukiko. But what does that job actually entail in the Arctic? What is a roustabout doing day to day?
It is the worst of the worst, truly. She was told it means every dirty job that comes along. So you have to think, she's driving the bus full of workers, she's running parts between these huge modules, she's cleaning up wellheads, picking up garbage.
And doing all of that in, what, 40 below?
40 below with a 15-knot wind whipping around you. These are potentially life-threatening jobs if you're not physically and mentally 100% prepared.
And she even had to lie to get the job right about driving a bus.
Yeah, a small detail, but it just shows her commitment to the infiltration. She had to claim she was proficient at driving a bus. I guess $1,000 a day is a pretty good motivator to learn how to handle a large vehicle very, very quickly.
The juxtaposition of that brutal, physically demanding work and the living conditions, that's what really defines this whole world.
It really is. I mean, Prudhoe Bay, 600 miles north of Anchorage, 250 miles above the Arctic Circle. It spans 125,000 square acres of just frozen terrain.
The sources describe the tundra outside as a Sahara of snow.
For 10 months of the year, yeah. It only gets about 7 inches of annual precipitation. The wind chill is just a constant. And exposure, if you're not in the massive Arctic gear they give you, it means death. Almost instantly. It is a completely hostile, monochromatic white world.
But inside
Yeah.
Arpetco has built this incredible bubble. The workers call it the Arpetco Hilton.
And not entirely sarcastically, the base camp is a true technological marvel. It's this massive collection of boxy, elevated 3-story modules
By elevated.
to keep them off the permafrost. The heat from the buildings would melt the ground underneath and cause them to sink and become unstable, so everything is built on stilts.
And the genius, or maybe the madness of the design, is that every single one of these modules is connected by enclosed, heated walkways.
So workers almost never have to step outside. You can go from the dining hall to the gym to your sleeping quarters without ever feeling that 40 below wind.
And to fight the sensory deprivation of the endless white landscape, the interiors are painted in these really jarring, bright primary colors.
Reds, blues, yellows. Our investigator, Kate, she noted it made her feel slightly dizzy, like a rat in a Technicolor maze. It's this deliberate overstimulation to counteract the understimulation of the Arctic.
And the extravagance of the amenities. It's just such a stark contrast to the isolation.
It is. They have a massive weight room, a full movie theater upholstered in red plush velvet.
And the pool where Chuck Cass died.
Exactly. But the dining hall, that might be the most telling luxury of all.
It's not just cafeteria food.
It's lavish. We are talking high-end meal service. This is all designed to keep morale up, to give the workers this sense of being perpetually cared for, provided for. Steak nights are Tuesdays and Thursdays. Prime rib is served every Sunday.
The source mentions Kate's astonishment on her first night there, filling 4 glasses of fresh milk. It just underscores how incredibly cut off they are from the real world, yet how spoiled they are at the same time.
That's the perfect way to put it.
And this strange combination of isolation, high pay, and extreme comfort, it must breed a very specific social dynamic.
It does. The gender ratio in the base camp is severely skewed. It's about 1 woman for every 5 men. Out in the field, on the rigs, it's even worse. Closer to 1 to 10.
So our investigator, Kate, she described her initial feeling as being like live bait in a shark pool.
And you can understand why. This demographic reality, combined with the pressure cooker environment, it creates this pervasive feeling, as she noted, of being out of control. Everything is provided for you. The money is excellent, and the normal rules of society just feel suspended.
That dynamic is deeply, deeply tied into the state's own financial structure. This is what we can call the Alaska paradox, the constant conflict between big oil and native culture.
Yes, and this is critical context for understanding just how much influence our Petco has. Because every single citizen of Alaska, including the Native Alaskans who often bear the worst of the industry's environmental impact, is financially connected to this operation.
And you're talking about the Alaska Permanent Fund Dividend, the PFD.
Exactly. This fund was set up back in 1976 using tax revenue generated from Prudhoe Bay crude. And half of the interest earned by that massive fund is distributed every year to every single qualifying Alaskan citizen.
And the sources mentioned the payout was, what, over $800 the previous year?
That's right. So this mechanism, it ensures that regardless of your personal politics, every Alaskan resident is a direct stakeholder in the continued operation and profitability of the oil industry. It completely complicates any effort to criticize or, God forbid, shut down our Petco.
It institutionalizes their presence.
It does.
Yeah.
And yet, our investigator's personal bias against our Petco is fierce, and it's grounded in history. She immediately recalls the Petco Anchorage spill.
That happened 4 years prior to this investigation.
Right. And that spill, it wasn't just some accident. For her, it was a symbol of pure corporate negligence. It involved a known drunk steering a very large crude carrier, a tanker, right through the Valdez Narrows.
And the result was a spillage of crude equivalent to half a day's production from Prudhoe Bay.
A catastrophic amount. Kate had such an intense personal reaction to this disaster that she had personally lobbied the governor at the time to expel our Petco from the state of Alaska entirely, to make an example of them.
So this deep-seated bias, it informs her entire view of the North Slope operation from the second she gets there.
And she immediately starts spotting signs of similar negligence, even on the most vital piece of infrastructure they have. While flying up, she noticed that the Trans-Alaska Pipeline System, the TAKS pipeline, had obvious visible maintenance issues.
She described seeing the insulation just peeling off in strips.
And haphazardly patched with duct tape.
Duct tape on a multi-billion-dollar pipeline.
Exactly. And you have to understand, this isn't just cosmetic damage. This is a huge systemic risk. This pipeline carries hot crude oil through thousands of miles of permafrost.
So peeling insulation leads to heat loss,
which can cause the surrounding permafrost to thaw. And if the permafrost thaws, it destabilizes the very foundation holding the elevated pipeline up. This is negligence on a colossal scale, yet it's patched with duct tape, the ultimate symbol of cheapness and quick fixes.
It's the ultimate irony, isn't it? They're spending millions on steak nights and plush movie theaters, but they're skimping on insulating the very pipeline that generates all the revenue.
It's a perfect encapsulation of their priorities. Kate's reflection when she's looking down on the Brooks Range from the plane really sums up the geological scale of this whole paradox.
Right. She starts thinking about the vast geologic timetable.
She muses on the fact that dinosaurs once roamed that exact land, laying down the biological material that 70 million years later is being extracted for our Petco's bottom line, for the state's budget, and for the gas tank of some random car back in the lower 48. The sheer immense scale of the extraction just puts the entire human endeavor into this sharp and sometimes very unsettling perspective.
So Kate is on the ground. She's living this brutal, roustabout life, trying to ignore the mechanics who operate under the theory that all wedding licenses are revoked north of the Arctic Circle.
A charming local custom.
Right. And all while she's trying to penetrate this logistical puzzle of how wholesale quantities of cocaine are breaching this hyper-secure perimeter.
And this is the central investigative challenge that King and Childress laid out for her. Childress knew for a fact that Anchorage International is one of the top 10 most secured airports in the entire nation, yet the drugs were still flowing onto the slope with this unnerving regularity.
Childress actually gave her a complete breakdown of the logistical nightmare that is the Dead Horse entry point, right? The public airport that serves Prudhoe.
He did, because it's not just the Petco and Amerix charters that the company can control and screen. Dead Horse sees 3 different commercial carriers, numerous government jets.
And then you have the ground transport.
An estimated 150 trucks coming up the haul road every single month. And critically, there are these remote native villages that are accessible by snowmobile, by outboard boats in the summer, or by small Super Cub planes.
So it's basically an open logistical sieve in the middle of a frozen nowhere.
That's the perfect description. So to find the dealer, Kate had to start by observing the patterns of consumption within the camp itself. Her first findings were pretty immediate, but they were subtle.
What'd you find?
Traces of cocaine found on the benches in the sauna. This indicated private, hidden use, not the big party scene, but individuals using.
But then came the social events, which provided the real substantive clues.
That's where it all came out into the open. She noticed widespread use, which confirmed for her that the drug problem was deeply pervasive. It wasn't just isolated to a few low-level users. She even specifically observed Tony Hartzler, the public relations rep, cutting lines on a mirror that was strapped to her wrist. The base camp was essentially saturated with cocaine.
But the best window into the corporate rhythms, and paradoxically, the best environment for her drug observation, was the most absurd spectacle of the entire year.
The annual turtle races.
This detail is so essential for understanding the bizarre, isolated culture of this place.
It provides this much-needed, surreal levity. For the entire duration of the races, business literally stops. Every department, security, production, catering, they all field a champion turtle. And they give them these ridiculous names like security's deputy dog or production's Aziera.
And the competition is serious.
It's completely over the top. The sources describe these elaborate cheerleaders, miniature sedan floats for the turtles, little chariots, and a rampant culture of bribery used to influence the official race judge.
People are trading what? Cases of company-issue hard hats for studded tires?
Exactly, just to bribe the person who is controlling the race line. This hyper-focus on this small, contained, absurd event is a massive pressure release valve for the high-tension, isolated environment they're all living in.
And I love the detail about Deputy Dog, the security turtle, winning all 3 heats.
Despite having to fight off these serious allegations that he had been illegally doped with Absorbin Jr.,
it's truly a glimpse into this contained micro-society that is completely cut off from any recognizable reality.
And that absurdity leads directly to the core of the problem. The Saturday night parties that followed the turtle races were a massive drug flood, as Kate observed it. Cocaine was just ubiquitous. It was being cut into lines openly. People were dipping wet fingers into it for a quick snort. It was even being substituted for salt on knuckles while taking tequila shots.
Kate's comparison, she said Caligula would have felt right at home.
Which tells you everything you need to know about the level of decadence and abandonment.
So this is where she connects the behavioral dots to the logistics. This is the critical aha moment.
It is. She initially struggled to find the source of the drugs. She was finding smeared pocket mirrors and empty Ziploc baggies, but there's no structure to it. Then she noticed the timing of the chaos.
She cross-referenced the 2 previous large-scale drug incidents, similar to the one she was witnessing after the turtle race, with the flight schedule.
And she found a pattern. Both of those incidents occurred immediately following a delayed Tuesday charter flight. And this leads to a brilliant piece of detective work that's rooted entirely in logistics.
The hypothesis was pretty simple. The dealer changes out with the shift rotation, which happens every Tuesday.
So when the charter flight containing the dealer and the fresh supply was delayed by 24 hours, the workers, who were desperate for their fix, went into this complete overdrive when the supply finally arrived. And that led to these massive, easily observable incidents of widespread drug use. The delay in the system made the pattern visible to her.
So she uses the flight manifests and the medical logs that Childress had provided to quickly narrow down the list of employees who changed shifts on Tuesdays and had the necessary mobility to move around the camp.
And this allowed her to identify her 3 prime suspects.
Tony Hartzler, the public relations rep, Gideon Trocchiano from catering, and Jerry McIsaac, the physician's assistant.
And here's a point the sources bring up that really challenges the typical assumptions about the motive for drug dealing. Childress was complaining that all 3 of them were making over $70,000 a year.
Which was a lot of money back then.
Yeah.
So if these people are already highly paid, why risk it all?
That's the critical question. It suggests the motive isn't pure financial desperation. It's more about the easy availability of massive untaxed cash. Or maybe it's just a compulsion that's enabled by the isolated, out-of-control environment.
But Kate, she focuses purely on opportunity. That's the real key to this smuggling ring.
Because their opportunities were unparalleled. Tony, the PR rep, drove the tour bus, which gave her access across the entire base camp and the immediate area. Gideon from catering was constantly moving between the different dining halls and kitchens. Jerry, the physician's assistant, was constantly on medical calls in the ambulance.
And all 3 of them had access to personal transportation, which is a huge luxury on the slope.
But the investigation really starts to zero in on Jerry McIsaac, because he held the unique logistical key to the whole operation, the medevac flights.
As the PA, he was frequently called upon to escort patients who needed immediate air transport off the slope, usually down to Anchorage.
And this is the massive security loophole. Kate realized that security personnel, even the ones at Anchorage International, which is hyper-aware of smuggling risks, they routinely left Jerry's medical bags and his equipment completely unchecked because of the Red Cross designation on them. It's a classic case of security blindness. It's driven by assumed trust and protocol. A Red Cross bag is presumed to contain life-saving drugs or oxygen or sensitive equipment. No one wants to be the security guard who holds up a legitimate medical emergency.
So Jerry was able to use this professional immunity as a perfect cloak for moving massive amounts of contraband.
Northbound with drugs, and as we're about to discover, southbound with stolen goods. Kate's encounter with him in her first week, where she actually joined him on a call to Production Camp 2 for a serious drug overdose that cemented his proximity to the supply chain in her mind, even before she understood his direct involvement. She knew the problem was local, and Jerry's unique access made him the prime mechanism for it.
And this is where the deep dive takes a sudden, really dark turn. What begins as a straightforward, if high-stakes, drug bust, it exposes a much more sinister, culturally destructive operation.
Yeah, grave robbing, the theft of ancient artifacts right there on the North Slope.
This is where that high-stakes industrial world crashes directly into native cultural heritage. Kate decides to use a little bit of her very limited free time to visit an archaeological dig at a place called Toad Point. It's a recognized Native Alaskan cultural heritage site.
She was probably just seeking a quiet break from the chaos of the Arpetco Hilton. And this site, it's run by a team led by an archaeologist named Chris Heller, and it provides this incredible window into ancient ingenuity.
And this segment is so essential for understanding the true value of what was being stolen. The sources detail some of the recovered artifacts, like the seal scratchers.
And these things are amazing. They were made from caribou bone, and they had these small bird claws attached to the end. The hunters would use them to mimic the sound of a seal scratching its own claws on the ice.
To lure them in.
Exactly. It would lure the curious seals to open leads in the ice where they could be successfully hunted. It's this beautiful piece of technology that's rooted in deep, respectful observation of the natural world.
She also noted the massive stone cairns that were built all across the slope.
And these weren't just random piles of rocks. The archaeologists explained that ancient hunters built these cairns, these large, upright piles of stone, to help them herd caribou. The caribou would mistake the cairns for men and would shy away from them in the direction the hunters wanted them to go, funneling them into traps or ambushes.
And Kate's reflection on this is so critical. She sees it as proof that humans have managed the Earth for millennia, but with much less sophisticated and vastly less damaging techniques than Arpetco's wellheads.
It establishes the cultural weight of the site just before we learn about its violation.
And the tension here becomes almost overwhelming. The archaeologists are trying to preserve this heritage, but they're fighting a phenomenon that's known as cultural cannibalism.
Yeah, the sources reveal that residents, particularly from St. Lawrence Island, are being forced by economic desperation to dig up their own ancestral graves to sell the artifacts for cash.
And why are they doing this?
Because their traditional economy, which is based on fishing and subsistence hunting, is collapsing. It's due to factors like increased regulation and overfishing by these massive foreign longliner boats. Chris Heller, the lead archaeologist, described the island as looking like it's been carpet-bombed by grave robbers who are just seeking quick, desperate cash.
And this desperation feeds directly into the Arpetco operation. The Toad Point archaeologists discover that several key artifacts are missing from their own trailer, specifically a very detailed ivory bear and a significant stone lamp.
And they immediately point their fingers at their own resident archaeologist, a man named Otto Leckard, who had conveniently stayed behind at the base camp that day for paperwork.
Having already seen Otto lingering suspiciously around Tony Hartzler, the PR rep and prime drug suspect, Kate immediately realizes the drug ring has a second, much darker operation running in parallel.
And the sources highlight the financial motive for the archaeologists themselves. They noted that staff archaeologists on these digs barely make minimum wage, which makes them intensely vulnerable to the black market, especially when they saw a single wooden Tlingit bowl auction for $5,000. The temptation to sell a fragment of bone for quick cash is just immense.
The conspiracy unravels completely after Kate is drugged and nearly killed, which is what forces Jerry McIsaac's confession.
Under immense duress, Jerry admits that he was smuggling packages for Tony via the medevac flights, but he fully believed he was just running a drug operation for her.
And this is the shocking double crime reveal.
Jerry was horrified, absolutely horrified, to learn that Tony was also using that same medevac route to smuggle these high-value artifacts that she was buying from the desperate Otto Leckard. Jerry had simply dismissed the packages. He called them junk, a bunch of old rocks and bones and walrus teeth.
And the shock value was just maximized by the price reveal.
Yeah.
Jerry was numb when Kate informed him that one such piece of junk bone had recently been auctioned off.
And the sources specified this was a piece of bone that looked like it was hacked by a 7-year-old with a butter knife.
And it sold for $55,000.
$55,000. That single price point completely redefines the scale of the crime. It goes from petty smuggling to high-stakes global antique theft.
That financial revelation, it confirms the gravity of the operation and the ingenuity of the smuggling method.
Southbound artifacts were tucked discreetly into the stretchers, right next to sedated or otherwise incapacitated medevac patients. The sources mentioned Kate's own cousin, Martin, who was taken off the slope earlier. The stretchers, because they're designated as medical necessities, were then forklifted up onto the plane, bypassing all normal security checks, even at Anchorage International.
So a medical emergency, a service that's meant to save lives, provided the perfect, unimpeachable cloak for cultural theft.
The revelation was so profound that Kate later admits she momentarily forgot her original mandate to find the drug dealer. She correctly pegged a kitchen helper named Anne McCord as the actual dealer, smuggling product in catering orders, but the grave robbing was just so much more compelling and so much more dangerous.
And that danger, it culminated in violence. Jerry and Tony realized Kate was getting too close.
So to eliminate her and to cover their tracks, they slipped a Mickey into her drink, a powerful drug that caused her vision to swim and the whole world to heave beneath her feet, with the goal of framing her for an act of sabotage.
They dragged the drugged and semi-conscious investigator to one of the most hazardous locations in the entire facility, Production Center 3, Skid 14.
This module is where the crude oil undergoes depressurization and drying. It's a deafening clamor of pipe and frame where visibility is low and the noise level is just absolutely crushing.
And their objective was lethal. Tony had intentionally twisted a valve. They left Kate near this twisted valve, planning for her to take the fall for a massive industrial accident. And the valve Tony turned was potentially releasing sour gas.
The sources really drive home the gravity of this situation. When Kate begins to recover and can finally focus on a sign, it reads, "Caution, SO204 may be present. This is not just a standard industrial hazard."
No. Jerry, the PA, had earlier confirmed how lethal it was. And John King later confirmed the extreme danger of that sour gas. He said, usually you don't even have time to smell it before it kills you.
It is an almost instantaneous poison. They didn't just want to frame her. They intended a quick, untraceable murder disguised as an industrial mistake.
But Kate manages to stumble out, plunges down the emergency stairs into the Arctic cold, and barely reaches a guard shack to call Childress. But before that, she has this visceral confrontation with Tony, right there at the open wellhead.
This is the absolute height of Kate's rage and desperation. She forces Tony to her knees in front of that open valve, shouting over the roar of the wind. She grabs Tony's nose, holds her hands, and demands, "Lick it!"
She's forcing Tony to internalize the literal immediate danger of the environment she had just weaponized against her.
Exactly. Tony resisted violently, and she suffered severe frostbite on her hands and feet during the subsequent apprehension. But that forced confrontation, it exposed the depth of their desperation.
And that scene, it casts a really chilling light back on the death of Chuck Cass, the guy in the pool.
It does. Jerry's earlier panicked comment, "It's not like we haven't done it before, McIsaac," it suddenly takes on this deadly new meaning. It implies that the overdose death of Cass may have been a quick, earlier murder orchestrated to remove a liability from their operation.
With the immediate danger averted, we turn to the aftermath. And the consequence of this North Slope operation is that justice is. It's rarely simple. Corporate justice focuses on mitigating risk and restoring production, and it often just ignores the deeper cultural crimes.
That's it, exactly. The core criminals are apprehended. You have Tony Hartzler, who's now suffering from frostbite. You have Jerry McIsaac and Anne McCord, the kitchen helper, who was the actual low-level distributor of the drugs via catering orders.
And Tony, she refused to talk about the artifact buyers, right?
Right. Her operation was cash only, which makes tracing the black market incredibly difficult. Otto Leckard, the vulnerable archaeologist, he confessed immediately and helped expose the full scope of the smuggling ring.
So for the CEO, John King, the primary mission was achieved.
Yes. The drug problem, the one element that was threatening a federal shutdown, was successfully removed from the slope. The corporate panic subsided. However, the use of the medevac system to smuggle artifacts exposed our Petco's lax security and their profound lack of internal control over their own logistics. The company was literally providing free, secured transport for illegal cultural antiques.
And this leads directly to the most powerful part of the aftermath.
Yeah.
Kate's final cultural and environmental mandate.
She now has King and Childress completely under her control, and she uses that leverage not for more money, but for environmental redress. She demands answers about an abandoned exploration well, a Christmas tree, pipe and valve assembly that's located near the Toad Point archaeological dig.
A Christmas tree is the final assembly of pipe and valves on an oil well, right? Often left behind after exploration.
That's right. And King initially tries to just dismiss her. He says it's none of your goddamn business and explains it was a duster, a dry well that was plugged and abandoned 20 years ago.
But Kate has done her homework.
She has. And she weaponizes our Petco's own lease language right back at them. She cites the most important stipulation in any state oil and gas lease, the requirement that all structures, once abandoned, must be removed and the site must be returned to its original state. That exploration well was a 20-year breach of contract.
And she doesn't just ask them to move the wellhead?
No, she forces our Petco to undertake a comprehensive restoration. They have to dismantle the wellhead, tear down the surrounding fence and the gravel base it sits on, and then reseed the entire area to restore the tundra. She forces this giant corporation into a costly act of ecological repair.
And here's where she pulls out her ultimate cultural leverage. She links the grave-robbing crisis directly to King's political vulnerabilities. She reminds him that Toad Point is a sensitive national archaeological site.
And then she uses the archaeologist's recent discovery of a burial site, and she threatens to use her influence and her family's powerful name to declare the area the grave of a legendary shaman and the entire dugout site a sacred shrine.
This threat is existential for our Petco.
It is. Fighting a politically charged native claims issue on federally protected, newly sacred ground would be a public relations and legal disaster far, far worse than the drug bust. Kate's partner, Jack, he drives the point home by reminding King, Kate is Ekaterina Shugak's granddaughter, invoking the deep cultural power of her family.
So King, recognizing this inevitable legal and political nightmare, he has no choice but to comply.
Despite his rage, he just growled, okay, we'll move the fucking Christmas tree. It's an absolute hard-won victory for preservation and environmental accountability over corporate inertia.
Kate leaves the slope, having dismantled the smuggling ring, exposed the cultural theft, and forced our Petco to address its environmental footprint. But this high-pressure, high-reward world, it leaves her grappling with a really profound internal conflict.
And this internal reckoning is so crucial to her story. She was constantly battling her deep anti-oil sentiment. She described the base camp as unreal and its inhabitants as out of control. And yet, she admits openly that she liked it.
She liked the escape from domestic responsibility.
The lavish dining, not having to make her own bed or cook, the constant activity, the turtle races, the gang beeping, the sheer pace of it all was exhilarating. And most importantly, she liked being 600 air miles from any responsibility, and she loved the money. The isolation created this bubble of guilt-free existence for her.
The assignment. It forced her to put a human face on the monster she'd always hated.
She realized our Petco isn't just some abstract, monolithic corporate juggernaut. It's Dale Triplett, the production operator, who meticulously tracks every single barrel of oil. It's Jerry McIsaac, the medic, ready to respond 24/7. It's Tony Hartzler, who, despite all her corruption, had an inexhaustible supply of humor when she was dealing with difficult tourists.
She concludes the project itself was impressive as hell, a testament to human engineering and collaboration in the face of impossible geography.
And yet, it was fundamentally flawed. Her final devastating synthesis on the industry itself is that oil extraction is robbing the biggest grave of all. Not just the burial sites at Toad Point, but the entire geologic timetable that was laid down by ancient life over millennia.
As she's leaving Anchorage, the transition is marked by this conscious act of cultural re-anchoring. Before she heads back to her remote homestead, Kate visits an arts and crafts shop.
And she doesn't buy a priceless ancient artifact. She buys a modern ivory otter carving created by an artist named Wilson Uzeva of Gamble, St. Lawrence Island, and she pays $200 for it.
And this small purchase becomes the focal point for her reflection on the spiritual and cultural concepts that were violated by the theft. She starts thinking about Amua.
Anua, it's the Aleut belief that animal souls live on and transfer after death. The ancient hunter, the sources explain, who decorated his harpoon, he did so to respect the seal's Anua. He was ensuring its soul would pass to an unborn animal, which would guarantee the continuity of the hunt and the entire ecosystem.
It's this spiritual framework focused on continuity and respect and ensuring that life transfers.
And it stands in stark, violent contrast to the short-term, profit-driven exploitation she witnessed at the slope. Whether it was robbing ancient burial sites or robbing the geologic timetable for fossil fuels, the entire Arpetco operation was based on taking without any respect for spiritual or environmental continuity.
And the final scene, it shows her back home in Nieltna with her grandmother, Ekaterina. She's carrying the ivory otter, which is a symbol of supporting a living artist who honors tradition rather than profiting from the dead past.
She has seen the monster up close and personal, and she concludes that despite all the corporate structure and the industrial scale, the monster has a human face. But that human face is capable of both profound corruption and sometimes great acts of restoration.
So we began this deep dive with a pretty simple objective. Find the source of drug smuggling that was threatening the operation that produces 14% of the nation's oil. And it led us down a path that revealed a sophisticated smuggling ring using Arpetco's own secure medevac system to move high-value ancient artifacts, all against the backdrop of this industrial facility designed for maximum output in minimum comfort.
The sources really show that the highly engineered isolation of the North Slope, it didn't purify human endeavor. It merely created unique vulnerabilities. The very systems that were intended to guarantee safety and save lives were repurposed to facilitate crimes that robbed the deep past, the cultural heritage, and the environment.
And the power of the investigator's final act forcing Arpetco to dismantle that exploration well and reseed the land, it remains a really potent image of individual accountability fighting against corporate inertia.
And this raises an important question for you, the listener, to carry forward. Kate's experience forced her to contrast the sacred concept of Anua's spiritual continuity and respect for life with the pervasive extraction mentality she saw all around her. So what does it mean for a society when the highest value is placed not on preservation or culture or community connection, but on the temporary wealth extracted from the world's largest burial ground, the fossil fuel reservoirs?
And finally, when a corporation is forced, under legal threat, to restore the land, is that restoration genuine accountability?
Or is it merely a calculated cost of doing business, a tiny expense that's necessary to continue the larger, more profitable act of robbing the geologic timetable?